So James Gunn, the director of the first two Guardians of the Galaxy films, was recently fired during Comic Con for uh, very off-color tweets about pedophilia and rape, and these comments were brought up by Trump supporters. And James Gunn is known for being a very uh, politically strong person on social media and has made his points about politics fairly well known. And so Trump supporters were digging into his account looking for something, and sure enough, they found it. Now, what's bizarre and awful about the situation is number one, these comments, I'm not defending the comments. They're awful comments. They're off color. They're tone deaf. Sure, whatever. But these happened 10 years ago, well before he was even hired by Marvel. Secondly, the situation was brought up before in an interview, and he then apologized for it and stated that he's a much different person now, and he realizes how off color and wrong those comments were. Um, it is kind of weird that he wouldn't take those down, but they were made 10 years ago. It's probably hard to scroll through your account and try to find old posts that you made. So
I think
go ahead.
the reason you wouldn't want to take comments like that down is just because yeah, it's practical to do so, but you could also argue it's lacking in integrity to sort of pretend you never said them in the first place rather than own up to the fact that you said those awful things and just leave them there.
That's fair, and I think that's the tact he took. I don't know if things would have played out for him differently had he just deleted the comments then. Um, but yeah. So these comments were brought up, and then before the comments themselves were even made a headline, DC, not DC. I don't know why I said DC. Marvel fired him immediately, no hesitation.
I do
And
think maybe in this case between Marvel and Disney, because it was a Disney executive who made the decision. And
yeah,
so
it
far,
was.
everyone at Marvel who has voiced anything about the subject seems to be on Gunn's side. Kevin Feige hasn't said anything, but Dave Bautista and I think a couple other cast members have voiced that they don't think what's happening to Gunn is fair. And I agree with that. I I really wanted to avoid talking about this in this video specifically, just because the last anytime I anytime that like really political stuff comes up on this channel, it tends to backfire. And I've already spent a long time on social media talking in circles with people making the same arguments about why they think he deserved to be fired and why I don't think that makes any sense. Like you said, it was 10 years ago. Whether or not he genuinely learned from his mistakes, we can't say because we don't know him personally, but at the same time, no one who doesn't know him personally can say that he didn't learn from his mistakes. We just kind of have to take it on good faith that he has, and the fact that his conduct is no longer reflective of those tweets. And again, I know that the argument is that it's not okay to joke about some things, but at the same time, people are doing this really, really stupid thing where they are calling him an actual pedophile because of the jokes that he made. And no, that doesn't make sense. Joking about a thing and doing that thing are not the same. By conflating jokes about pedophilia with pedophilia, you're not helping anyone's case. You're just trivializing actual cases of pedophilia. So this is really one of the bigger cases of misplaced outrage, I think. And
I
even
agree.
if I and
Like
even if I
I've made jokes. Um, like I remember when me and Lucy did the Avengers Infinity War spoiler cast. I joked about saying I could see Avengers Infinity War and die happy. That doesn't make me suicidal or
exactly,
anything like that.
yeah, like you can make jokes about murder and not be a serial killer. And like even if I didn't agree with that, And if I agreed that James Gunn was really terrible and that those comments, for whatever reason, should still reflect who he
Who
is
he is
now,
now, a full decade later.
yeah, even if I agreed with that, because people will make the argument, this is the big one also. He was 40 at the time, he was a grown man, he should have known better. Yes, that's true, but who says that in your 40s is when you magically stop being able to grow and change as a person? Like, people up until their death will constantly learn and change and adjust themselves. And we should not say that, oh, he was 40 at the time, that magically means he can't be a better person now. That's dumb. But all that aside, even if everything I just said I didn't agree with, this is not a fireable offense. He made a bunch of stupid jokes. And, like, yes, it's Disney. Disney cares a lot about being seen as family friendly and having their PR. But here's the thing, Disney has weathered far, far worse than this for far longer. I think firing Gunn like gave them infinitely worse PR than keeping him would have. Because now you've got legions of people pointing out the hypocrisy of, like, John Lasseter and Johnny Depp, who we mentioned earlier, committed actual crimes against people. And they did not get let go by Disney until months after the fact. Johnny Depp is still in Disney to an extent. James Gunn, based on jokes from a decade ago, gets fired on the spot. That is getting Disney like way worse public perception than those tweets could have ever given them.
I agree, especially because, um, like, a lot of people, like, by and large, when you look at the general audience for a movie, a lot of them are not on Twitter. They're not on social media. They're just freaking casual moviegoers. And
Exactly.
a lot of them are not going to pay attention to Twitter. I guarantee you, a lot of people would never have even known about these tweets, even though they were brought back up by Trump supporters. If Disney had not fired him over this, I guarantee you that the people who now know about it would know.
Exactly. Trump supporters aside, like your personal morals or political beliefs about the situation aside, had Disney done nothing, this would have blown over in the course of a month. And there are people who I know are going to make the argument that no, that's not true. These things stick longer than you give them credit for. That's false. Again, Johnny Depp was a big controversy for a while. He's still getting applause at Hall H. The PewDiePie saying the N word, completely forgotten about over the course of a couple weeks. Logan Paul doing his stupid things in Japan, filming a dead body and laughing at it, forgotten about within the course of a month. The Channel Awesome controversy, where a lot of fairly well known internet personalities come out with stories about how they were abused professionally for years and years and years, forgotten about by now. Had Disney done nothing, guaranteed this whole thing would have blown over and no one would have been worse for wear. Disney would not have lost any money. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 would have still made them $1 billion+. It's just I'm mad that this happened to Gunn because I personally do believe that he's a better person and I have no reason not to believe that. I love his art. That aside though, I'm just mad at Disney for being this dumb. This is the dumbest business decision that I think they've made in years.
I could not agree more, man. Especially because, like, anytime you get hired by a company, especially Disney, who is one of the biggest corporations, if not the biggest corporation in the freaking world right now, they look into you and they do a background check and they check your Twitters and your Facebooks. They
They
check all
did.
that stuff. And if they, I doubt they didn't see those tweets. Um, if they did, that wasn't enough for them to say, "Oh, we can't hire this guy based off a few off-color jokes," as opposed to his artistry and his filmmaking. That's what they cared about when they hired him. Why would that change when those comments are now made quote unquote public, even though they were always public to begin with?
Yeah. And like I
Um,
really just I'm going to not even respond to comments on this video about this issue unless you can come up with a really unique argument as to why you think this is justified, because all of the arguments I've heard as to why people think this was a good decision have all been the same arguments, and they're so easily refutable, and I'm sick of going around in circles with this conversation. So let this be, on this channel, my definitive statement about this thing. I do not feel the need to add any more. My thoughts are made clear.
okay, yeah. Just to cap things off on this topic before we move on, I just want to say, Gunn direct the first two Guardians films are very much his films. Um, the Russo brothers like carried it over beautifully with Infinity War and made it feel like Gunn was directing those scenes, even though he wasn't. Um,
Mm.
but I don't know, for an entire Guardians film to not be directed by him, especially when it could have been, and the script was his, and like they were about to start shooting in a few weeks. That really puts a bad taste in my mouth, and I think it was a really bad decision on Disney's part to just
I
outright
want
fire him like that.
I want Disney to do this. I'm not gonna be okay with this situation until Gunn is just rehired. Like that is like I my hope from this whole situation is that Disney learns from this, like how PR actually works, and that this makes their company look far worse than the alternative, and that they just straight up rehire him.
Hopefully, man. Like people say, it would have been like favoritism because of the Roseanne thing, but um, Screen Junkies
Rose,
News, someone in Screen Junkies News brought this up in their video where they talked about this whole issue. Um, Clark Wolf was there, and she was like, the two situations are very different, and they're not comparable because what Gunn said was said um, 10 years ago, and he hasn't said anything like that since. Roseanne like constantly and repeatedly made those types of statements, those off-color and tone-deaf statements again and again and again, and was constantly getting away with it until she finally said it to and the wrong person uh, got wind of it and did something about it. Um,
yeah,
so that's not the same thing. Gunn, there's every reason to believe that Gunn is a different person because hasn't made those kinds of comments since 10 years ago. Roseanne is a repeat offender.
yeah.